We want to turn now to the Middle East and some increasing signs of a disconnect between Washington and Israel as their war against Hamas in Gaza rages on. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu admitted that he and President Biden disagree on the future of Gaza. At a fundraiser, Biden told donors that Netanyahu needs to change his tactics as support for Israel's military response wanes. But it's difficult for Netanyahu, according to President Biden, because of his hardline government. We're joined now by a senior advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Mark Regev. Mark, thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us. I want you to react to a specific remark from President Biden. He says, and I quote, "This is the most conservative government in Israel's history," adding that the Israeli government does not want a two-state solution. Mark, is President Biden wrong?
Well, the position of my prime minister is that the Palestinians should have all the power to rule themselves and none of the power to hurt Israel. And that second part is also very important. As you saw, Israelis are still in shock from what happened to us on October 7th, where Palestinians crossed the border from Gaza and butchered our people. I think it's important, though, to put this disagreement with the Americans into context. We agree on the need to defeat Hamas, that Israel is within its right and within its obligation to our people to destroy Hamas, that we have to see a new situation in the Gaza Strip. And I think it's not impossible that when as we work together, that we can find a way to move ahead in a post-Hamas Gaza scenario.
To that point, though, Biden's comments seem to reflect the idea that Netanyahu has to change his approach, but that his government is making it very difficult for him. Do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu feels constrained?
Boris, Israel, as of 2 months ago, has a wider government now. One of the large center parties joined the coalition to pursue the war against Hamas. It's part of this national unity we have now in Israel, because there's really no left and right in Israel when it comes to defeating Hamas. Everyone understands that we cannot have this terror enclave on our southern border, that we have to end that Israeli families should not have to live in fear of terrorists crossing the frontier in the middle of the night and butchering their children. No one in this country wants to go through October 7th ever again. And so we have a wider government now. That government is helping us achieve unity to defeat Hamas. And I think it'll also help us when we have to start dealing with a post-Hamas scenario and what sort of arrangements we'll have in the Gaza Strip. The overriding principles, though are clear. A post-Hamas Gaza will be demilitarized and de-radicalized.
Well, the question of what happens to Gaza after Hamas, there are very divergent views in the Israeli government. Who do you think should oversee Gaza after Hamas? Because U.S. officials are pushing forward the idea that the Palestinian Authority should have a significant role, something that, from his remarks, it does not appear that Benjamin Netanyahu supports.
So we say the following. We don't want to reoccupy Gaza. We don't want to govern the people of Gaza. Obviously, in the initial post-war period, we're going to have overriding security control, because we can't see a resurgent terrorist element come and take away all the benefits that the war will bring, because we want to see, as I say, a demilitarized and de-radicalized Gaza Strip. That's good for Israel. That's ultimately good for the Gazans, who've had a Hamas government for 16 years, and it's only brought them hardship, misery, and poverty. They, too, deserve better.
So on the question of Biden suggesting that Israel is losing global support, does that influence the thinking of the Israeli government in any way? I think it's become clear, given what the UN Security Council tried to push forward this weekend that the U.S. blocked, that the world is not okay with the 18,000 plus people that have been reported killed, many of them women and children in Gaza. Does this in any way alter what Israel is trying to accomplish, or at least the way that it approaches its war with Hamas?
Well, first of all, the UN is a strange place, and there's an automatic, as you know, Boris, there's an automatic anti-Israel majority there at the United Nations. And we thank the United States. We're very appreciative of that veto that we had America's diplomatic protection. It really is appreciated here in Israel. But as we move forward in this, it's crucial that we win this war. It's crucial that we defeat Hamas. In doing so, in parallel, we have to do everything we can to safeguard Gazan civilians, and we have to do everything we can to make sure they get the aid that they need. But that war needs to be won. For Israel, there is no choice. We have to defeat Hamas.
Margaret, are you concerned that if Israel doesn't move closer to the U.S.'s expectations, specifically when it comes to civilians and a post-Hamas Gaza, that support for Israel from the United States may start to wane?
Look, we've seen amazing support from the United States. We've just said it was expressed by the American support of the United Nations. It's suppressed by the American ammunition that is arriving in Israel to help us fight Hamas. We really do appreciate it. And we share the same goals here. Hamas has to be defeated. And there has to be a new reality in Gaza where Hamas is no longer in power there, controlling the Gaza Strip, turning it into a base of terror. I also think it's possible to achieve understandings on what it is a post Hamas Gaza. Because ultimately, Israel, the United States want to see a Gaza that works for the people of Gaza. And we agree in the principles of demilitarization and de-radicalization. There might be differences on how to achieve that the best way, that final stage after the war is won. But I think we can, and we've worked together well. I think today the U.S.-Israel cooperation on all levels is almost unprecedented in its positive cooperation. Yes, we're working very closely together, and we can work closely together on the post-Hamas scenarios.
Mark Regev, we have to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much for the time, sir.
Thank you for having me.